Hello again. This is a short review of some of the papers I use for colored pencil drawings. Until now, I have mainly reviewed pencils. Even when reviewing pencils, one can have a bias to a particular style or feel. I tend to like pencils that layer and blend well, but hold a sharp point for detail. I also don't mind putting in the effort to burnish and fill the tooth of the paper as long as I'm happy with the final product. Since I've only been drawing for just over a year, I've only been exposed to a limited number of papers. For my most basic colored pencil drawing, I'm always going to use the Strathmore 300 series drawing paper. If you are just starting drawing, I would suggest going with a larger pad like the 11 by 14 inch. If you mark your trace lines using your monitor, then the 11 by 14 inch fits a 24 inch monitor nicely. If you have a smaller monitor, then you might want to go with the 9 by 12 inch. For most of my reviews, I use the Strathmore 300 series because it's relatively inexpensive and is what I would consider a neutral style of paper for colored pencil comparison. So this pug was created on the Strathmore 300 series. As you can see, the paper held up fairly well. I also did the comparison of Faber-Castell Classic, Prismacolor, and Crayola with the Doctor Strange drawing. And again, you can see a bit of warping in the paper. And lastly, the Donald Trump image. And again, this paper held up reasonably well considering how hard I was pressing. I don't use Strathmore 300 drawing paper for drawings that are meant to be gifts or sold. For heavy blending and burnishing, I find the 300 series paper warps a bit too much. In these cases, I'll go for the Strathmore 400 series drawing paper, which is a little bit thicker. For the 400 series Strathmore drawing paper, I did the drawing of Trent Reznor using Crayolas. There was a little bit of warping, but again, with the Crayolas, I'm pressing quite hard. And so this does hold up better than the 300 series. For any colored pencil drawings that I might want to incorporate Inktense, watercolor, or mineral spirits for blending, I will use watercolor paper. An inexpensive watercolor paper is the Canson XL watercolor paper. This is a 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. This paper works well for Inktense drawings or colored pencil that you might want to combine with Inktense or thinners. And this was the Rihanna drawing I did using Inktense and Faber-Castell. You can see it warps a little bit, but it held up reasonably well. If you're a bit too rough with it, I noticed the paper starts to deteriorate. If you need watercolor paper that holds up to a little more abuse, I find the Fabriano 140-pound hot press watercolor paper works well. I've also used the Moulin 140-pound hot press watercolor, and that also holds up quite well. This is an Inktense with the Moulin and this was just a colored pencil with the same paper, and I was quite aggressive with it. For the Fabriano watercolor, I don't have any finished products yet, but I have two in the works, and so far I'm fairly happy with the paper. The Moulin and Fabriano are a little more expensive, in the range of $1 or $2 per 11 by 14 inch sheet. Being budget-minded, I only use these papers if I have a serious drawing planned. In summary, for those budget-minded, Strathmore 300 series works well. If you're going to be blending and burnishing quite hard, then you're better to go with a little bit heavier weight paper, like the 400 series. If you're going to be using any type of thinners or Inktense, water with your paper, again, budget-minded, the Canson XL is quite reasonable. If you're looking for something that holds up a bit better, then the Fabriano watercolor paper works reasonably well. Also, the Moulin is a really good paper. Thank you for watching. that's all for now, and I should be back probably in a week with an Inktense drawing.